to the Talent Optimization Podcast, the go-to podcast for CEOs and HR professionals wanting to bridge the gap between the strategy and tactical implementation of talent optimization within their organizations. Through interviews, predictive index, and personal experience, your host, Tracy Shirk, helps you discover the facets of talent optimization from both a CEO and HR perspective to truly create the dream team for your organization. Are you ready? Let's get started.
Welcome. We are in the perfect week of the year. I love this week because we are in the middle of Christmas and New Year's, and most of us are taking a little bit of time for rest and relaxation, which for most of our listeners in human resources, R&R has not been rest and relaxation over the last year. It has been resignations and retention that does not always happen, or recession. So I hope you're getting the R&R, and welcome to the Talent Optimization Podcast. My name is Tracy Shirk, and I'm the Chief Talent Officer here at Elevated Talent. And today we are chatting about looking back at 2022 and then dreaming in and planning for 2023 and all the amazing things that are going to happen within that. And I have an amazing guest with me today. With me is Michael Alexander. And what Michael does is he helps ambitious companies create and implement actionable strategies for predictably improving enterprise value. So when we talk about that value we create for our clients and our employees, so much of that has to do with strategy. So, Michael, welcome.
Hey, thank you. It's great to be here, and thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. So I know we are not sitting with a glass of hot cocoa around a fire at this moment, but our listeners likely will be when they listen to this. So when you think about reflecting on the year, what is that first thing that you look at?
When I reflect on 2022, a couple of things come to mind. We've emerged in many's minds from a pandemic. Retention issues and accessing new employees, new talent has eased a bit. And of course, that was replaced by, supply chain issues. And over the last year, we've seen, at least with the portfolio companies that I work with, an improvement in supply chain. While it's not all where it needs to be, there's been much improvement. And the teams are really rocking. Some record earnings. We see that in the market, in the public markets. And I can tell you from a private company perspective, a lot of people and their employees had a really good year. So reflecting on 2022, emerging growth, problem solving, a lot of people did a lot of great work for their employees.
So the $1 million question is, are those employees fulfilled in the work that they're doing?
Yeah, well, great question. And actually timely, because I've been recently, just in the fourth quarter, I've had a lot of activity that brings that into play. So I've done some strategic planning work, and when you engage with employees, and when I work on strategic plans, of course, you're working with the senior team. And what I'd like to do is get next level, 2 levels down, and have some access to people, even on the shop floor in manufacturing businesses. And what I'm looking for is, how happy are they? Do they look happy? Are they moving with a spring in their step? And that tells me a lot about a company. And then that helps me resonate on the issues of the day they may be facing, where then I'm better able to help them. And not just with the strategy development that many people, know and practice, but also as it pertains to the human aspect of it. Because let's face it, the major issue with any strategy to execution gap is the employees and how they're linked back to that strategy.
Absolutely. And I'm going to pause here for a second to say, if you're curious as to what that looks like or how to have that conversation, we brought a line level employee on the podcast, and it's podcast number 67, Earning Trust with Your Employees. And Dave talks about how the leadership team was able to execute a new strategy by getting down to the line level with staff, and why he left the organization, why he came back. So I just want to kind of say that for our listeners as you're listening into what Michael's saying. If you're looking for an example, because sometimes we need to see an example to step into it before we can believe it ourselves, there's a great one for you. So with that, Michael, I want to kind of circle back around to that gap is, hey, what's actually happening on the floor, right? And what does fulfillment look like? Because the key here is it is going to be different for every person.
Absolutely. The level of engagement. And so some companies, right? Those that usually are performing well, better than most, and or they want to, they'll do an employee engagement survey. And what is it? It's typically annually, and then they have plans and programs where the leaders go back and try to close any gaps from that work. The problem is, as I see it, is that is kind of like a spot in time. And having been involved in those, we all know that you're chasing your leaders to really try to get them engaged to follow through in a professional way. The issue typically is, while they may want to, we all have a business to run and we have daily routines, and we're just not geared to carve out the kind of time it may need. So what I kind of think about with the strategy to execution gaps is you've got that engagement level. Everyone knows what they got to do to keep their job. The question is, how do we keep people engaged even in a greater way so they're inspired to do more? They're inspired to do whatever it takes, whatever is necessary, not because they have to, because they want to help that team move forward. And I would maintain the best way to do that is to focus on how to inspire your employees every day of the year.
Yep.
Now, employee engagement surveys are good. Don't get me wrong. But if you try to do it once a year, you will not be as successful, in my view, and based on what I've seen and in my experience, as if you incorporate it into your daily thinking and how to work with the entire team. And that's all the way down to the shop floor.
Yeah. And I think what's great about employee engagement surveys is that they do give you that spot in time, and then they give you where you can benchmark against it. So I have a client I'm actually presenting to the cabinet, the executive team this afternoon. And what we do is we take the previous engagement surveys along with the exit surveys, and we're benchmarking that every single time. Then we're digging in and saying, all right, who are the top 5 leaders that we're going to work with? And when I say top 5, it's not always the best performing leaders, right? But we're looking at who are those leaders and what do they need? Because so often what I find is what these folks need is they need somebody to take them by the hand because they don't know how to do it and they feel like they're expected to know.
Yeah, no, exactly right. And that is a pretty good basis for why I get out of bed every day. What I do when I show up is to help people either have the trust to do what they already know to act on, or the next evolution of that is, if they're not quite sure of something, have the ability to have someone to talk to, whether it's through a coaching program or a formal engagement of consulting. No matter how, sometimes we just need someone to talk to that's been there, done that, or has a methodology that can be easily incorporated. And, that's kind of why I get up every morning, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I love it. And you know what I'd love to do, since we're in this Christmas, New Year's season and, planning for the next, reflecting on the last, is let's give our folks something that they can do right now. So I'm going to give you an exercise. Then, Michael, I know you're going to tie this into a strategy piece.
Now, I wasn't expecting this, so you sure I'm going to be able
I wasn't either. So we're just going to play. So, and this came from my good friend, Steve Brown. And Steve is a very well-known HR speaker in the SHRM. So most of our listeners will know Steve. But Steve has in his book, HR Rising, where he asks all of his managers to go in and think about all the conversations they've had in the last day and write them down. And then next to all those conversations, put a plus or a minus. Was it a positive conversation or was it a negative conversation? Guess what happens? Almost all of those conversations that we have are negative. And guess what? If we think about those conversations that we're having with our people and about our people, are we empowering them to move forward? So what I want to challenge you to think about is, as you reflect on what are all the amazing things that happened and that you accomplished over the last year, and what goals did you hit? So often our brain has this way of elevating our goals, and as leaders, we have a way of ratcheting up what the profit should be or what the outcomes should be, right?
Yeah.
And we get stuck in this negative cycle. So look at that, then look at what is creating those results. Is it people? or is it processes?
Wow.
Because what we look at all day long is the result, result, result. And what we fail to look at is the people. So I want to take you back to the people and how you create a container for your staff to be fulfilled.
That's a pretty good assignment. So when I reflect back, first, I can tell you this. The further back I go in my life and my career, when I was younger, I would say that absolutely I would fit the mold that you just said, right? From Steve Brown, right? The research findings is that most of the discussions potentially could be scored with a minus, right? A negative. I can tell you today, though, the way I get up and look at everything from life to business, people, happiness, well-being, relationships, at all. The idea is we should show up happier most of the time. And it really has a direct reflection on our happiness and wellness. And if we were, I will maintain this, is even in the business and especially in the business, happier people that feel better will do better work and create a better world. It's true. And today, I would promise you, if you ask me at the end of every day to do the pluses and minuses, I don't have minuses, because when I feel them coming, I immediately, it's like my hand's on a hot stove. I get my hand off the stove. I have a self-command now to be able to, and this is what I help people do with the coaching. They have the self-command to immediately stop the negative reflection, because when you have a negative thought or a negative interaction, productivity goes to heck in a handbasket. We must work out of the creative side of our brain, the innovative side of our brain, the side of our brain that allows us to have first empathy for ourselves, put the oxygen mask on yourself first, and then empathy to others, and then navigate solutions and activate with conviction. And you can do that without bullying people. You can do that while creating environments that make people happier. I spend a lot of time on happiness, and I can reflect in the last year that the companies I've seen that are more successful, whether they set out to do it or not, they have a method that create happier people at their companies. And when they do, they find more rock stars, and they really, really, really crush the numbers. And oh, by the way, at the end of the day, I'm not a zealot on any of this stuff, because at the end of the day, we need numbers, right? Because you got to be able, without profits, you cannot fund additional investments in any company, whether it's my company, yours, a big company, a manufacturing company, a mid-sized company. We need profits to make those investments for continued growth and productivity and human development. And that's what I find is, to me, the most important today, because without the people focus, the rest of it, even if you can accomplish some measure of growth, without the fun factor, I just don't think you have a complete company.
I agree. And I love what you said, and I'm going to circle back to this. And you said activate with conviction, right? So what are we doing? And do we have the people in that mix to do that, right? Because at the end of the day, we focus so much on the profits and the business outcomes, but the processes plus people are what are going to get us there. You know, how do we bring fulfilling work in? How do we bring fun into what that is? And, you know, with that, we're about ready to kind of land our plane here, Michael. So with that, I think that there's some key nuggets that we've uncovered in our little hot chocolate around the fireplace conversation this morning. And so what is a takeaway you have for executives listening into our conversation today?
Yeah, don't give up your responsibility to be a great leader, but do focus on quit being a judger. Don't judge yourself. Don't judge others. Don't judge situations. Have discernment. Get the facts. Explore the reasons. Innovate solutions. Navigate within your own moral system and keeping other people in mind. And then again, activate and have fun doing it.
I love it. And what about for our folks sitting in the HR seat that so often are kind of bridging this gap between the tactical to the transformational portion of what people are doing inside of organizations while connecting that into what that leader's vision is?
Yeah, wow, that's a great question. So with the companies that I work with, if the HR leader, irrespective of their position in the organization, so I use the word leader a lot, But the person responsible for the HR function, irrespective of their level in the company, they have to have a seat at the table. And in some cases, they don't have quite the seat that I would have hoped or expected when I get into a process with a company. And then I work directly with the CEO to try to get to a point where I could show them the value if they focus more on the people and if they have their HR leader become more involved. Again, it's all about the people.
Yep, absolutely. I love it. So thank you so much for joining us. And for our listeners, I hope that you were able to grab a couple of nuggets here. And Michael, where can they find you if they want to know more about you?
Yeah, well, you can find me on LinkedIn, but talentleaderboard.com is my website that I use to conduct the people side of my business. I love to have initial chats and discovery calls with a broad base of people, whether you're an investor, whether you're selling a business, buying a business, looking to create a really award-winning strategy, or just want to find a better way to create happiness in your company, give me a call.
Awesome. And I will have both Michael's LinkedIn and talentleaderboard.com in our show notes. And with that, as you're thinking about what does this next year look like, really think about that strategy piece, because that's where Michael can be so impactful in what he's doing. And then, Michael just mentioned something about HR leaders. Do those HR leaders have that seat at that table? Do they understand what they need to do to transform their HR department and their organization and align with what the executive's vision are? If that's you and you're raising your hand to that, our Inspire program is kicking off in February, and we do a lot of great work collaborating with others just like Michael so that you can get an and both with what you're doing to implement. So check that out. That is also in our show notes. And I hope that you have a fantastic new year, and we will see you in 2023. Thanks so much.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Talent Optimization Podcast. You'll find more tools and resources for CEOs and HR professionals looking to bridge the strategies versus implementation gap of talent optimization at elevatedtalentconsulting.com. We've also created a free, valuable resource for you to begin bridging the gap called the Talent Optimization Foundation Membership Program. You can access it for free at elevatedtalentconsulting.com/foundation. Be sure to tune in next week for another episode to learn more about talent optimization and creating a dream team for your organization.